Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the sofa cushion. "Olivia," Eleanor snapped, "the kitchen, now!" I smiled sweetly, giving Ethan's hand a final squeeze before standing. "Of course, Eleanor. I know my place." The double meaning wasn't lost on anyone in the room. I might be sent to the kitchen, but I was still Ethan's mate, his Luna. As I walked toward the door, I could feel Victoria's cold gaze burning into my back. I kept my head high, Roland Warner's dying words giving me strength. "I'll take Victoria and Emma to see the new roses in the garden," Isabel offered, clearly trying to diffuse the tension. Ethan nodded, rising from his chair. "I have business to attend to anyway." In the kitchen, I found myself alone. All other servants had been dismissed, Eleanor's way of ensuring I understood my position in the pack hierarchy. I sighed, tying an apron around my waist. The venison for tonight's main course sat waiting on the cutting board. As I began chopping, my mind wandered back to Roland Warner's revelation. Victoria had deliberately intercepted Lily's kidney donor, ensuring my daughter's death while pretending innocence. The truth burned inside me like acid. If I revealed what I knew now, who would believe me? The only witness was dead. My hands trembled slightly as I sliced through the meat, imagining it was Victoria beneath my knife. Each cut was precise, deliberate, satisfying. "Planning to murder the venison, Olivia?" I froze at the sound of Ethan's voice. I hadn't heard him enter the kitchen, a testament to how lost I'd been in my vengeful thoughts. He moved closer, his powerful presence filling the space. The heat from his body radiated against my back as he stepped behind me. "What game are you playing?" he asked, his breath warm against my ear. I continued chopping, refusing to acknowledge how his proximity affected me. "I don't know what you mean." My heart raced traitorously. Despite everything, my body still responded to his nearness. His hand closed over mine, stilling the knife. That little display in the sitting room, touching me like that in front of everyone. I could feel the barely contained anger in his grip, the tension in his body. Good. Let him feel something. Anything. I turned to face him, our bodies inches apart. His amber eyes gleamed with something dangerous, anger, confusion, desire. "Victoria," the voice called from outside the kitchen. "Victoria was looking for you." Of course she was. Victoria always knew when to interrupt, when to pull Ethan back into her orbit. I couldn't help the bitter smile that curved my lips. "You should go. Your real family needs you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't start this again." "Start what? The truth?" I challenged, setting down the knife. "You've made your choice clear to everyone, Ethan. Victoria, Emma, they're who you want, not me. Not Lily." The words tasted like poison on my tongue, but they needed to be said. For 5 years, I'd watched him prioritize Victoria and Emma over his own family. "Lily is gone," he said harshly, his eyes darkening, "and you need to accept that." The casual dismissal of our daughter ignited my rage. Gone because you weren't there when she needed you. Gone because you were too busy playing father to another woman's child. My voice rose with each word, the pain and anger I'd suppressed for months finally breaking free. His hands gripped my upper arms, pulling me closer. "You think I don't care that she's gone? That I don't feel that loss? I think you were never there to begin with," I spat. "Even when she was alive, you were Victoria's shadow, not Lily's father." The truth hung between us, sharp and undeniable. Ethan had been at every one of Emma's achievements, every milestone, while missing most of Lily's. His grip tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind me of the power in his hands. "Is that what this is about? Are you trying to break up with me, Olivia?" The question hung between us, charged with unspoken emotions. My eyes locked with his, searching for any sign that he actually cared about my answer. "Haven't you already agreed to that?" I retorted, leaving him speechless. Chapter 32, A Taste of Revenge. Where had Ethan disappeared to? I had only turned away for a moment to discuss the seating arrangement with Eleanor, and he'd vanished. I smoothed my designer dress, irritation flickering across my features. This was supposed to be my night, the celebration of my triumph over Olivia at the Howling Moon Grand Hotel. Yet Ethan had wandered off again. "Have you seen Alpha Stone?" I asked a passing servant, my voice sweet but commanding. The young wolf lowered her eyes respectfully. "I believe he went toward the kitchen, Mrs. Frost." The kitchen? Understanding dawned on me. That's where Eleanor had sent Olivia. A malicious smile curved my lips as I gestured for Isabel to follow me. "Let's go find our alpha, shall we?" Isabel matched my stride, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I can't believe that woman had the audacity to touch Ethan like that in front of everyone." "Desperation," I replied with a dismissive wave. "She knows she's losing him." As we approached the kitchen, I slowed my steps, hearing the low rumble of Ethan's voice from within. Perfect. I wanted to catch them together, to see Olivia put in her place. Inside the kitchen, Ethan's enhanced werewolf hearing picked up our approaching footsteps. His body tensed against Olivia's as he recognized my scent. "Victoria's coming," he growled, his amber eyes flashing with warning. Olivia's emerald gaze locked with his, defiance radiating from her slender frame. "Let her." Ethan released his grip on her arms, stepping back just enough to create distance between them. Olivia swayed slightly from the sudden loss of his support, her hand reaching for the counter to steady herself. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I drew closer to the kitchen door. Just before I reached it, Olivia made her move. With deliberate slowness, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Ethan's muscular torso, pressing her body against his. His jaw tightened, eyes darkening with anger and something else, something that made my blood boil. "Olivia Winters, don't mess around," he growled, the warning in his voice unmistakable. But she didn't release him. Instead, her arms tightened around him as the kitchen door swung open, revealing their embrace to my shocked gaze. I froze in the doorway, Isabel gasping behind me. Ethan's hands moved to Olivia's shoulders, pushing her away with barely contained frustration. His expression was thunderous as he turned to face me. "Victoria," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I was just leaving." Olivia quickly turned back to the cutting board, resuming her work as if nothing had happened. But I wasn't fooled. I noticed how Ethan's shirt was partially unbuttoned, revealing a small red mark on his collarbone. My eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. That mark hadn't been there earlier. Isabel noticed it too, her face contorting with rage. "You shameless woman," she exploded, storming past me toward Olivia. "How dare you try to seduce the Alpha King right under our noses?" Olivia continued chopping venison, her movements precise and controlled. "I don't know what you're talking about, Isabel." "You worthless woman," Isabel snarled, stepping closer. "Everyone knows he doesn't want you anymore. You're just embarrassing yourself." Without warning, Olivia turned and shoved a heaping spoonful of salt directly into Isabel's open mouth. Isabel's eyes widened in shock as she gagged on the overwhelming taste. "Oops," Olivia said calmly. "I thought you needed something to go with all that bitterness." Isabel sputtered and coughed, spitting salt onto the pristine kitchen floor. With a final hateful glare, she rushed from the room, still gagging and spitting. Ethan watched the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. Then, without a word, he straightened his shirt and walked out, brushing past me in the doorway. I remained, glaring daggers at Olivia's back. The tension between us crackled like electricity in the air. "You think you've won something," I hissed, my perfect composure slipping. "But we both know the truth." Olivia didn't respond, her focus seemingly absorbed by the meal preparation. The dismissal only fueled my anger. "This little game you're playing, it won't work," I continued, my voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "He's already mine." With that, I turned and left, my heels striking the floor like punctuation marks to my threat. Behind me, alone in the kitchen, Olivia finally paused in her work. She raised trembling fingers to her lips, wiping away the lingering presence of Ethan with the back of her hand. I arranged the final garnish on the platter of venison, my movements deliberate and precise. The tender meat was perfectly seared, complemented by a reduction of moonlight wine and forest herbs. Despite Eleanor's instructions, I didn't join the family at the dining table. I couldn't bear to watch Victoria simper at Ethan while Emma played the perfect daughter. Instead, I slipped out to matriarch Evelyn Stone's garden. The elderly former Luna had always shown me kindness, teaching me about the rare healing plants she cultivated here. Though she was away visiting relatives, tending her garden brought me a measure of peace. I knelt beside a patch of moonlight herbs, gently removing weeds that threatened to choke the delicate plants. The familiar scent of the herbs calmed my racing thoughts. Playing gardener now? How fitting! Victoria's mocking voice shattered my brief moment of tranquility. I didn't look up, continuing my careful work among the plants. "These herbs need attention," I replied evenly, "unlike some people who receive more than their share." Victoria circled around me, her designer heels sinking slightly into the soft garden soil. That little display in the kitchen was pathetic, you know. I remained silent, focusing on a stubborn weed with unusual intensity. "You think anyone was fooled?" she continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "Everyone knows you're just Ethan's unwanted wife." My fingers stilled among the herbs, but I kept my gaze downcast. A pathetic woman who couldn't even protect her own child. My head snapped up, emerald eyes meeting her cold blue ones. "What did you say?" Victoria's perfect lips curved into a cruel smile. "You heard me. Poor little Lily, gone because her mother wasn't good enough." I rose slowly to my feet, my entire body trembling with barely contained rage. Roland Warner's dying words echoed in my mind. Victoria didn't want to save her own daughter. She wanted Lily dead. "You have no right to speak her name," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Victoria stepped closer, emboldened by my restraint. "It's almost poetic, isn't it? You lose your daughter while Emma thrives under Ethan's protection, the daughter he actually loves." The slap echoed through the garden like a thunderclap, the force of it snapping Victoria's head to the side. Her perfectly manicured hand flew to her reddening cheek, shock written across her features. "You," she gasped, but I cut her off by stepping closer, my emerald eyes cold as ice. "This is just the beginning," I warned, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned and walked away, leaving her stunned in the garden. My hand stung from the impact, but satisfaction coursed through my veins. It was a small victory, but it tasted sweet nonetheless. Behind me, I heard small footsteps running toward Victoria. "Mommy, what happened?" Emma's childish voice called out. I didn't turn back, but I could imagine Victoria gathering Emma into her arms, using the child as both shield and weapon. "It's nothing, sweetheart," Victoria soothed, but her voice carried to me on the evening breeze. "That mean lady hurt Mommy, but don't worry, we'll make her sorry." Emma's response was too quiet for me to hear, but I felt a chill run down my spine nonetheless. Victoria was dangerous enough, but I'd learned that her daughter could be equally manipulative. I watched the mean lady walk away from my mommy. Her red handprint was still on Mommy's cheek, and it made my tummy feel all twisted and hot. Nobody was allowed to hurt my Mommy. Not ever. "I hate her," I whispered, hugging Mommy tight. "I'll make her cry like she made you cry." Mommy stroked my hair, her fingers gentle. "Emma, darling, you shouldn't say such things." But I could tell she didn't really mean it. Her eyes looked different, the same way they did when she told me to practice my sad face for Daddy. "I know what to do," I said, pulling away from her embrace. "I'll go now." Mommy grabbed my arm, her eyes suddenly worried. "Emma, what are you planning?" I gave her my sweetest smile, the one that always made Daddy give me anything I wanted. "Nothing bad, Mommy, I promise." She hesitated, then released my arm. "Be careful, sweetheart." I nodded and skipped away, following the path that the mean lady had taken. I knew exactly where she was going, to the moonlit reflection pool, where she often sat alone. Sure enough, I found her standing by the water's edge, staring at her reflection. She looked sad, which made me happy. She deserved to be sad after hurting my Mommy. I approached quietly, putting on my best nice girl face. "Auntie Olivia," I called, my voice high and sweet. She turned, her body stiffening at the sight of me. I could see she didn't like me calling her auntie, and that made me want to say it even more. "Emma," she replied, her voice careful. "You shouldn't be out here alone." I stepped closer, my smile widening. "I wanted to see you, Auntie." Her eyes narrowed slightly as she took in my expression. She was smart, she could tell I was pretending, but it didn't matter. Adults always believe children in the end. "Where's your mother?" she asked, glancing behind me as if expecting Victoria to appear. "With Daddy," I answered, watching her face closely to see if that hurt her. It did. Her eyes got darker, like when Mommy mentioned her dead daughter. I moved to stand right at the edge of the reflection pool, my small shoes inches from the water. The pool was deep in the middle, deep enough that if I fell in, everyone would come running. "You should step back from the edge," she warned, taking a step toward me. I widened my eyes, making them look scared. Are you going to push me like you pushed my mommy? She froze, confusion crossing her features. I didn't. That was all I needed. With a perfectly timed movement, I threw myself backward into the reflection pool, my small body creating a dramatic splash. The cold water enveloped me as I let out a piercing scream that would surely bring the entire household running. Chapter 33, False Accusations. A piercing scream shattered the evening quiet of the Stone Estate gardens. I whirled around to see Emma's small body plunging into the moonlit reflection pool, water splashing violently as she disappeared beneath the surface. For a split second, I stood frozen in shock. Then instinct took over, and I rushed toward the water's edge. Before I could reach her, Victoria's voice rang out across the garden. Help! Someone help! My daughter is drowning! Servants appeared from every direction, rushing toward the commotion. 2 of them immediately jumped into the reflection pool, while others gathered around the edge. Save her! Save Emma! Victoria wailed, her perfect makeup streaking down her cheeks as she sobbed dramatically. I watched as the servants pulled Emma from the water, their faces etched with genuine concern. They wrapped her in jackets and blankets, fussing over her like she was precious pack royalty. The stark contrast to how they had treated Lily during her illness wasn't lost on me. When my daughter had needed help, these same servants had been distant and formal, following Eleanor's lead in treating her as less important. What happened here? Eleanor Stone's sharp voice cut through the chaos as she hurried toward the scene, Isabel trailing behind her. Victoria pointed a trembling finger at me. She pushed Emma. She pushed my baby into the water. Eleanor's eyes narrowed dangerously. Seize her, she commanded without hesitation, pointing at me. 2 burly male servants immediately grabbed my arms, their grip firm enough to bruise. I struggled against their hold. I didn't push her. She fell in on her own, I protested, but Eleanor silenced me with a withering glare. Take her to the main house, she ordered. Alpha Stone will deal with this. As the servants dragged me away, I caught Emma's eye. The little girl was shivering dramatically, but there was something else in her expression, a hint of satisfaction that chilled me more than the evening air. The sound of running footsteps announced Ethan's arrival. His powerful frame cut through the gathered crowd, his amber eyes immediately finding Emma. What happened? He demanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of an alpha. Emma, seeing him approach, began to tremble more violently. Her small lips quivered as she looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Daddy, she whimpered, reaching for him with small, shaking hands. Without hesitation, Ethan rushed to her side. He quickly assessed her condition, his movements efficient and concerned. With gentle hands, he removed her wet clothes and wrapped his leather jacket around her tiny frame. I've got you, princess, he murmured, scooping her into his arms. Emma clung to him, burying her face against his chest. Then, slowly, she turned her head to look at me. Our eyes met across the garden, and I saw something in her gaze that no 5-year-old should possess: calculation. Luna Olivia, she... Emma began, her voice breaking as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She trailed off, seemingly too overcome with emotion to continue. Ethan's gaze snapped to me, his amber eyes hardening to cold stone. The accusation in his look was unmistakable. The same look he'd given me when Emma had fallen into the cake tower at the Silver Crown Hotel. I met his gaze unflinchingly, anger bubbling up inside me. Once again, he was ready to believe the worst of me without question, without even hearing my side. Take her inside, Ethan ordered the servants holding me. Now. The main house was warm compared to the evening chill of the gardens. The servants pushed me into the sitting room, forcing me to stand in the center like a criminal awaiting judgment. Ethan entered moments later, still cradling Emma in his arms. The child refused to leave his embrace, clinging to him like a lifeline while occasionally shooting me fearful glances. Dr. Harold Bennett arrived shortly after, summoned by Eleanor to examine Emma. The elderly pack healer approached with his medical bag, his movements deliberate and precise. Let me see her, Alpha Stone, he requested, his voice carrying the weight of decades of experience. Ethan reluctantly set Emma down on the sofa but remained close, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. Dr. Bennett examined her thoroughly, checking her temperature and listening to her breathing. She's caught a chill, but nothing serious, he finally announced. Some warm moonberry tea should help her recover quickly. Then he added something that made my blood run cold. However, we must monitor her closely. With her recent kidney transplant, even a minor illness could lead to complications. Her immune system is still vulnerable. Ethan's face darkened at these words, his amber eyes fixing on me with a sharp, accusatory glint. The implication was clear. I had not only pushed Emma into the water, but had potentially endangered her life due to her medical condition. Victoria, who had been weeping softly beside Ethan, suddenly straightened. Her tear-streaked face hardened as she turned toward me. "How could you?" she demanded, her voice rising with each word. "This isn't the first time you've targeted us, is it? First me, now my daughter?" She took a step closer, her perfectly manicured finger pointing accusingly at my face. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous of what Ethan and I share, of how he loves Emma." Victoria's voice broke with practiced emotion. "She's just a child, Olivia, a frail child who has already suffered so much. Do you have any idea what could have happened? After her surgery, even a simple cold could be dangerous." Her words struck like physical blows. What kind of woman targets a 5-year-old? What kind of heartlessness does that require? Each accusation was carefully crafted to mirror my own suspicions about Lily's death. Victoria was painting me as exactly what she was, someone who would harm a child out of jealousy and spite. I watched Ethan's expression grow grimmer with each of Victoria's words. His jaw tightened, the muscle there twitching with barely contained anger. I stood tall, refusing to be cowed by their accusations. I did not push Emma into the reflection pool. She fell in on her own. Before I could explain further, Isabel stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "That's a lie. I saw everything from the garden path. You pushed her with both hands when you thought no one was watching." Isabel's voice dripped with contempt as she continued. "You're so transparent, Olivia. You can't stand that Ethan loves Victoria and Emma instead of you. Your jealousy has driven you to this." I opened my mouth to defend myself, to point out that Isabel couldn't possibly have seen anything from the garden path, which was obscured by tall hedges. But Eleanor cut me off before I could speak. "This isn't the first time you've used such underhanded tactics, is it? 5 years ago, you drugged Ethan to trap him into marriage. Now you're trying to eliminate anyone who threatens your position." Eleanor turned to the servants standing nearby. "Take her to the stone ancestral hall. It's time she learned her place in this pack." The servants moved forward, grabbing my arms once more. I struggled against their grip, trying to catch Ethan's eye. "Ethan, please! You know I wouldn't do this!" I pleaded. But Ethan remained seated on the sofa, his face impassive as he watched the servants drag me away. Not a flicker of doubt crossed his features, not a moment of hesitation in believing the worst of me. As I was pulled from the room, I caught a final glimpse of Victoria comforting Emma, who had miraculously recovered enough to whisper something in her mother's ear. Victoria's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. The stone ancestral hall was cold and imposing, its stone walls lined with carvings of previous alpha leaders. The servants pushed me roughly into the center of the circular room, the sound of our footsteps echoing ominously. "Kneel," one of them ordered sharply. Chapter 34, The Matriarch's Return. I sat rigidly in my chair, glaring at Olivia Winters with undisguised contempt. The stone ancestral hall's cold atmosphere matched the ice in my veins as I watched her stand before me, her shoulders squared despite her precarious position. How I loathed this woman, this nobody who had somehow ensnared my nephew and gained a position she didn't deserve. "You have nothing to say for yourself?" I demanded, my voice echoing against the stone walls. Olivia pressed her lips together, swallowing whatever justification she might have offered. Smart girl. Nothing she could say would matter anyway. Ethan had made his choice clear. Victoria Frost and her daughter Emma were his priority now, not this pathetic excuse for a Luna who couldn't even protect her own child. "Your silence speaks volumes," I said, rising from my seat. "You know you're guilty." Victoria stood beside me, her perfect features arranged in an expression of righteous indignation. She had played her part flawlessly, as always. "To think you would target an innocent child," I continued, circling Olivia like a predator. "A child who has just undergone a kidney transplant, no less." Olivia's emerald eyes flashed with something dangerous. Anger, perhaps, or the bitter recognition that she stood alone against us. Without Ethan's support, she was powerless in the pack hierarchy. Pathetic, I spat, enjoying how she flinched at my words. Isabel's POV. I stepped forward, unable to contain my excitement. Finally, after years of watching this nobody steal my brother's attention and my grandmother's affection, justice would be served. Kneel, I commanded, savoring the word on my tongue. Olivia remained standing, her stubborn defiance igniting my rage. Who did she think she was? I said kneel, I repeated, emphasizing each syllable. When she still refused, I delivered a swift kick to the back of her knees. The satisfying sound of her body hitting the stone floor sent a thrill through me. Two servants grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to stay down. Her emerald eyes glared up at me, filled with a hatred that matched my own. Mother, I said, turning to Eleanor with barely contained glee, shall we proceed with the family punishment? Mother nodded, her cold eyes fixed on Olivia's kneeling form. Begin. One of the servants handed me the Alpha's discipline rod, its polished surface gleaming in the dim light of the ancestral hall. The ancient runes carved into the wood seemed to pulse with anticipation. I raised it high, then brought it down across Olivia's back with all my strength. The sound of wood striking flesh echoed through the hall. To my disappointment, Olivia didn't cry out. Her jaw clenched, but no sound escaped her lips. I struck again, and again, each blow harder than the last, driven by years of simmering resentment. Still, she remained silent, her stoicism only fueling my anger. The servants held her firmly in place as the punishment continued, their faces impassive. You think you're strong? I hissed, leaning close to her ear. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. When the rod failed to break her spirit, I tossed it aside in frustration. My eyes fell on the ancestral pack whip hanging on the wall, a brutal instrument reserved for the most severe transgressions against pack law. No one had used it in decades. Its 9 leather tails, each embedded with moonstone fragments, were designed to cause maximum pain without leaving permanent scars. I grabbed it, feeling its weight in my hand. The servant's eyes widened, but they dared not question me. Perhaps this will loosen your tongue, I said, unfurling the whip with a dramatic flourish. I raised my arm, preparing to bring the whip down across Olivia's already bruised back. The anticipation of her screams made my heart race with dark excitement. Olivia's POV. I braced myself for the bite of the whip, my back already throbbing from the discipline rod. Through the haze of pain, I heard the door burst open with a thunderous bang. I'd like to see who dares touch my Olivia. The voice that echoed through the stone ancestral hall sent a wave of relief washing over me. Matriarch Evelyn Stone stood in the doorway, her diminutive frame somehow filling the entire space with her presence. Fear rippled through the room like a tangible force. Isabel flinched violently, losing her grip on the whip. The leather tails recoiled, striking her own leg. She let out a piercing scream, dropping to the floor as blood seeped through her expensive pants. Eleanor's face drained of color. "Mother!" she stammered. "You're back." Isabel whimpered from the floor, clutching her injured leg. "Grandmother!" The servants trembled, bowing deeply. "Matriarch!" But I only felt joy flooding through my veins. With a surge of strength, I scrambled to my feet and rushed toward Matriarch Evelyn. "Grandmother!" I cried, tears of relief streaming down my face. She opened her arms, enfolding me in a protective embrace. Her familiar scent, moonlight herbs and wisdom, surrounded me like a shield. "My dear Olivia, are you all right?" she asked, her aged hands gently examining my face. "I'm fine," I assured her, though my back screamed in protest. Tears welled in my eyes as a torrent of questions poured out. "Grandmother, when did you wake up? Why did you come back alone? Are you well?" Her eyes, sharp despite her years, softened as she patted my hand reassuringly. "I'm fine. Grandmother is strong." Her touch was a comforting balm, soothing the ache of betrayal and isolation I'd carried for so long. I sat beside Emma's bed, watching her sleep peacefully. Her tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving faint tracks that tugged at my heart. My own tears of frustration were still wet as I wiped them away. Everything had been going perfectly. Olivia was finally getting what she deserved, punishment for daring to stand between me and what I wanted. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. A servant entered, his expression anxious. Mrs. Frost, Alpha Stone requests your presence downstairs immediately, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Matriarch Evelyn has returned. My blood ran cold. Matriarch Evelyn? The old woman who had been stuck in the past for 5 years? I rose shakily, smoothing my dress with trembling hands. Is she lucid? The servant nodded, his eyes darting nervously. Very much so, ma'am. And she's asking for you, Alpha Stone, and Miss Emma. I glanced at my sleeping daughter, dread spreading through me like poison. If Matriarch Evelyn had truly returned to her senses, everything I had built could come crashing down. The truth about what happened 5 years ago, a truth I had meticulously buried, was now in jeopardy. I gently woke Emma, whispering reassurances as I helped her dress, her small face scrunched with confusion. Mommy, who's Matriarch Evelyn? She asked innocently. Alpha Stone's grandmother, I replied, forcing a smile. A very important lady who wants to meet you. As we descended the stairs, I saw Ethan's face light up with joy at the sight of his grandmother. My heart sank further. While Ethan embraced the old woman, I hung back, an unfamiliar sensation of fear crawling up my spine. Olivia's POV. I stood beside Matriarch Evelyn, drawing strength from her presence as Ethan approached. His face transformed with genuine joy as he embraced his grandmother. Grandmother, I've missed you, he said, his voice warm with affection. Matriarch Evelyn patted his cheek lovingly, though her eyes held questions she wasn't yet asking. My boy, you've grown even more handsome. Her gaze hardened when it fell on Victoria, who clung to Ethan's side like a shadow. Without acknowledging her, Matriarch Evelyn turned pointedly away, tightening her grip on my hand. The silent gesture spoke volumes. She knew I was suffering and was letting me know I wasn't alone anymore. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in Eleanor's stiff posture, Isabel's bandaged leg, and the servant's fearful expressions. Finally, her gaze settled on me, noting my disheveled appearance and the way I winced when moving. Olivia, what happened? She asked directly. Before I could answer, Isabel jumped forward eagerly. Grandmother, Olivia is vicious, she exclaimed, her voice high with excitement. Emma is only 5 years old, and in such cold weather she actually pushed Emma into the pool. That's why mother and brother punished her. Matriarch Evelyn's expression remained neutral as she turned to me. Olivia, you tell me. Grandmother, I didn't, I said simply, meeting her eyes. Isabel couldn't contain herself. Olivia, you still dare to say you didn't do it? I saw it with my own eyes. Did you? I interrupted, my voice cutting like ice. Are you sure you saw it with your own eyes? Isabel faltered under my steady gaze. She knew as well as I did that the garden path was obscured by tall hedges. There was no way she could have witnessed anything from there. Grandmother, I said, turning to Matriarch Evelyn with newfound confidence, I have proof. Without waiting for a response, I led one of the security guards back to the moonlit reflection pool. My phone lay hidden in the grass where I'd placed it before Emma's arrival. I checked the recording, almost an hour long, capturing everything from the moment I'd left that kiss mark on Ethan's neck in the kitchen. I'd started recording as a precaution, anticipating Victoria's fury. What I hadn't expected was Emma deliberately jumping into the pool to frame me. Back in the living room, all eyes were on me as I handed the phone to Matriarch Evelyn. The proof is here. Chapter 35. You Dare Touch the Luna, Matriarch Evelyn's POV. I watched the video on Olivia's phone with growing anger. Each second of footage confirmed what I had suspected. My family had betrayed my trust in the worst way possible. The recording clearly showed Emma deliberately throwing herself into the moonlit reflection pool while Olivia stood several feet away. There was no pushing, no malice from Olivia, only a calculated performance from a child too young to have learned such manipulation on her own. My anger rose like a tide as the video continued, showing Victoria's false accusations and Eleanor's immediate condemnation without investigation. The final straw was watching my own granddaughter, Isabel, claiming to have witnessed something she couldn't possibly have seen. I lowered the phone, my hand trembling with rage. The room had fallen deathly silent as everyone awaited my judgment. Kneel down, I commanded, my voice cutting through the tension. Isabel's face brightened immediately. She clearly thought my command was directed at Olivia. The smug satisfaction in her eyes made my blood boil even hotter. She straightened her posture, ready to witness Olivia's humiliation. When Olivia remained standing, confusion flickered across Isabel's features. "Olivia Winters, didn't you hear grandmother tell you to kneel?" she snapped, grabbing Olivia's arm roughly. "Kneel down now! I told you to kneel down!" I roared, my voice echoing off the walls. Isabel froze, her hand still gripping Olivia's arm. Shock registered on her face as she slowly turned to meet my gaze. "Grandmother?" she questioned, disbelief coloring her voice. "Did I stutter?" I asked coldly. "Kneel. Now." Isabel's legs seemed to give way beneath her as she crumpled to the floor. Her eyes, wide with confusion, stared up at me imploringly. "Grandmother, what did I do wrong?" she asked, her voice small. I held up the phone, my grip tightening around it. "This is what you call seeing with your own eyes?" I gestured to Bernard Shepherd, our elderly butler who had served the Stone family for decades. Without a word, he took Olivia's phone and connected it to the projection system. The video played against the living room wall, large enough for everyone to see. Emma's deliberate fall into the water was unmistakable, as was Olivia's genuine shock and concern. Isabel's face drained of color as the truth was revealed for all to see. She hadn't anticipated actual evidence. Her lies stood exposed in vivid detail. "Olivia Winters, you're so vicious," Isabel suddenly accused, desperation in her voice. "You set this up beforehand just to get me punished, didn't you?" The slap echoed through the room before anyone realized I had moved. Isabel's head snapped to the side from the force of my blow. "Grandmother, why did you hit me?" she wailed, clutching her reddened cheek. "Where did I go wrong? Olivia is clearly framing me." "You dare talk back!" I thundered, my patience completely exhausted. "What's wrong with Olivia being cautious? Did she hold a knife to your throat and force you to lie and frame her?" I raised my hand again, ready to deliver another blow. Isabel cowered, covering her face with her arms. "Mother!" Eleanor rushed forward, placing herself between me and Isabel. "Mother, Isabel is still young and doesn't understand things. Don't take it to heart." I stared at my daughter-in-law in disbelief. "Still young? 24 years old and still young and doesn't understand things? When does she plan to grow up?" "Eleanor, you've spoiled her." Eleanor flinched at my words but remained protectively in front of her daughter. I glared at her, disappointed beyond words. "Go to the Stone Ancestral Hall and kneel to reflect on your actions," I ordered Isabel, pointing a finger at her trembling form. "Without my permission, no one is allowed to let her out." Two servants immediately stepped forward, grasping Isabel by the arms and dragging her away. Her protests faded as they pulled her from the room. Eleanor shot a venomous look at Olivia, who calmly returned the gaze. Then Olivia's attention shifted to Victoria Frost, who was shrinking against Ethan's side. "Grandmother," Olivia said softly, her emerald eyes reddening with unshed tears. "Victoria also wronged me." I was taken aback for a moment. In all the years I had known her, Olivia had never complained about her treatment. She had endured everything silently, protecting others even at her own expense. A surge of warmth filled my heart. My girl had finally learned to speak up for herself. That warmth quickly transformed into icy fury as I turned my gaze to Victoria Frost. I watched Victoria pale under Matriarch Evelyn's stern gaze. For once, the perfectly composed Victoria looked genuinely frightened. She tugged at Ethan's sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan?" Ethan glanced down at her, his amber eyes unreadable. Victoria's face fell as she realized he wasn't immediately jumping to her defense. Tears welled in her eyes, practiced, calculated tears that I had seen too many times before. She turned to me with a perfectly crafted expression of remorse. "Olivia, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I was just so worried about Emma that I spoke without thinking. I didn't mean it." Though her words were directed at me, her performance was clearly for Ethan's benefit. I watched his expression soften slightly, accepting her flimsy explanation without question. He glanced at me, his eyes sending a clear message. "Drop it. Let it go. Don't make a scene." A cold fury swept through me. After everything that had happened, the false accusations, the humiliation in the Stone Ancestral Hall, the physical punishment, Victoria thought a simple sorry would erase it all? I ignored Ethan's warning look and stepped forward. Victoria's eyes widened as I approached, uncertainty flickering across her perfect features. The sound of my palm connecting with her cheek was sharp and satisfying. Before she could recover, I struck her again on the other side. "Victoria, I'm so sorry," I said, perfectly mimicking her insincere tone. "I didn't mean it." "Olivia Winters," Ethan roared, grabbing my wrist before I could strike again. His grip was tight, almost painful, but I didn't flinch. I met his gaze steadily, challenging him to defend her again. Victoria, perhaps emboldened by Ethan's intervention, forgot herself completely. Her mask of contrition vanished, replaced by raw fury. "Olivia Winters, you dare hit me!" she shrieked, raising her hand to retaliate. Before her palm could connect with my face, a cane struck her arm with surprising force. Victoria recoiled with a cry of pain, clutching her forearm. "You dare touch Olivia!" Matriarch Evelyn bellowed, her small frame vibrating with anger. Victoria's eyes widened in shock. "Grandmother, Olivia hit me first!" she protested, gesturing to her reddened cheeks. "Even so, you wronged her first," Matriarch Evelyn stated firmly. "Olivia is not one to cause trouble." Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. After years of standing alone against Victoria's manipulations, someone was finally taking my side without question. "And don't call me grandmother," Matriarch Evelyn added, her voice sharp as a blade. "Who are you to call me grandmother?" Victoria flinched as if physically struck again. Her carefully constructed place in the Stone family was crumbling before her eyes. "But I've always called you," she began. "That was my mistake," Matriarch Evelyn cut her off. "I allowed too much familiarity from someone who hasn't earned it." Victoria's face crumpled. She looked to Ethan, clearly expecting him to defend her against his grandmother's harsh words. Ethan's jaw tightened, caught between his grandmother's authority and Victoria's expectations. The conflict played out across his features as he struggled with his response. I watched him with a strange detachment. Once, his indecision would have hurt me deeply. Now, I found I didn't care which way he leaned. "Grandmother," Ethan finally said, his voice carefully measured. "Victoria has been a close friend of our family for many years." "Friend?" Matriarch Evelyn repeated, emphasizing the word. "Not family, not your mate, a friend." Victoria's eyes filled with genuine tears now. The distinction was clear and cutting. "As for you," Matriarch Evelyn turned to me, her expression softening. "My dear Luna, what other injustices have you suffered in my absence?" Luna. The title rang through the room like a bell. Matriarch Evelyn had deliberately used it to remind everyone of my position, not just as Ethan's wife, but as the female alpha of the Silvercrest pack. I began, uncertain how to summarize 5 years of isolation and mistreatment. "She's been through quite enough today," Matriarch Evelyn declared, placing a protective arm around my shoulders. "Bernard, prepare the East Wing for Olivia. She will stay there tonight, away from those who have harmed her." Bernard bowed deeply. "Yes, Matriarch." "But grandmother," Ethan protested. "Olivia's place is—" "Her place," Matriarch Evelyn interrupted firmly, "is wherever she feels safe, and clearly that is not by your side at present." The rebuke silenced Ethan immediately. His grandmother rarely criticized him directly, making her words all the more powerful. Victoria, sensing an opportunity, stepped closer to Ethan. "Emma needs comfort after her ordeal," she murmured. "Perhaps I should." "You should leave," Matriarch Evelyn stated flatly. "Take your daughter and go home. You've caused enough trouble in this house for one day." Victoria's face flushed with anger. "You can't just—" "I can, and I have," Matriarch Evelyn replied. "This is still my home, and you are not welcome in it tonight." Victoria turned to Ethan again, her eyes pleading. "Ethan, please. Emma is frightened." Ethan hesitated, clearly torn. "Grandmother, Emma is just a child. She shouldn't be punished for deliberately jumping into the reflection pool to frame Olivia," Matriarch Evelyn finished for him. "That child needs discipline, not coddling." Victoria's face darkened with hatred as she glared at me. "This isn't over," she whispered, too quietly for anyone but me to hear. "You dare touch the Luna!" Matriarch Evelyn bellowed. "And don't call me grandmother. Who are you to call me grandmother?" Chapter 36, The Matriarch's Protection, Matriarch Evelyn's. I leaned heavily on my cane, my old bones aching with fury rather than age. The room had fallen into a tense silence after my outburst at Victoria. Good. Let them all remember who still holds the power in this house. "Olivia," I said, reaching for her hand. "With grandmother here, no one can bully you anymore." The relief in her eyes nearly broke my heart. How long had my poor girl suffered while I was lost in my confused memories? Victoria's face had turned an interesting shade of red at my words. I watched with disgust as she quickly composed herself, transforming her rage into a pitiful expression. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at Ethan. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling perfectly. I nearly gagged at the performance. Did my grandson truly fall for such obvious manipulation? With a dismissive snort, I returned to my seat, my cane thumping against the hardwood floor with each step. The sound seemed to echo my authority through the room. "Who allowed Victoria Frost to come in?" I demanded, my voice sharp enough to make Eleanor flinch. "Didn't I say that as long as I'm alive, she's not allowed to step foot in the Stone family's house?" I fixed my gaze on Ethan, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. "So am I too old now, and my words no longer carry weight in this house?" I continued, letting the accusation hang in the air, Victoria's POV. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood, fighting to maintain my composed expression. The old witch hadn't directly ordered me to leave, but her message couldn't have been clearer. This was a public humiliation, designed to remind everyone of my place, or lack thereof, in the Stone family hierarchy. My eyes sought Ethan's, silently pleading for him to defend me. He met my gaze briefly before looking away, his jaw tight with tension. Eleanor was no better, her eyes fixed firmly on the floor, not a single word of support from either of them. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was alone in this battle. "I should go," I murmured, making one last attempt to salvage my dignity. "Emma needs rest after her ordeal." I reached for my daughter's hand, pulling her close to my side. She blinked up at me with confusion, still playing the part of the traumatized child. As we walked out of the Stone mansion, I felt Olivia's eyes on my back. The smugness radiating from her made my skin crawl. Once outside, safely hidden from view by the massive oak trees lining the driveway, I let my mask of composure slip. "This is all your fault," I hissed, roughly dropping Emma's hand. The sudden movement startled her awake from her feigned drowsiness. She stumbled, falling to her knees on the gravel path. "Mommy?" Emma called out, her voice small and confused. I ignored her, striding toward the waiting car. My heels crunched against the gravel, matching the grinding of my teeth. "Mommy, wait for me!" Emma cried, scrambling to her feet and running after me. I didn't slow down. Let her chase me for once. Matriarch Evelyn's POV. As soon as Victoria disappeared through the front door, I straightened my posture. The frail elderly woman act had served its purpose. "Ethan," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument, "meet me in the Stone Ancestral Hall. Now." Without waiting for his response, I turned to Bernard Shepherd, who stood quietly by the door. "Bernard, bring Isabel from the hall. I want her to witness this." Bernard bowed deeply. "Yes, matriarch." I made my way to the Stone Ancestral Hall, my steps purposeful and strong. The ancient stone walls seemed to whisper their approval as I entered the sacred space. Isabel was still kneeling in the center of the room, her expression brightening with relief when she saw me. "Grandmother!" she exclaimed, attempting to rise. "Who allowed you to get up?" I snapped, my voice echoing off the stone walls. Isabel froze mid-motion, her legs trembling from the extended kneeling. The pain in her knees finally overwhelmed her, causing her to pitch forward onto the cold floor. Eleanor rushed to her daughter's side, helping her back into a kneeling position. "Mother, please," she pleaded. "Isabel knows she was wrong. She's learned her lesson." I raised an eyebrow, waiting expectantly. Eleanor nudged her daughter. "Isabel, apologize to your grandmother." Isabel's eyes flashed with resentment before she quickly masked it. "Grandmother, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong," she mumbled, her voice lacking any genuine remorse. "You shouldn't be apologizing to me," I corrected sharply. Isabel's head snapped up, confusion written across her features. Then understanding dawned, followed by horror. "Apologize to Olivia," Eleanor whispered urgently, giving her daughter another nudge. Isabel's jaw clenched, but she turned to face Olivia, who stood quietly beside me. "Olivia Winters, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have wronged you," she forced out through gritted teeth. I studied her face for a moment, finding no true repentance there, but the public apology would have to suffice for now. "Eleanor, take your daughter and go," I ordered, waving my hand dismissively. "I need to speak with my grandson." Eleanor didn't need to be told twice. She helped Isabel to her feet and quickly ushered her from the hall, not daring to look back. As they left, Ethan entered, his powerful frame seeming diminished by the weight of my disapproval. "Ethan, kneel down," I commanded, pointing to the center of the hall. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees before me, his head bowed in submission. The alpha king of the Silvercrest pack, reduced to a chastised pup before his grandmother. "You promised me you would take good care of Olivia," I said, circling him slowly. "Is this how you take care of her?" Each word was a lash against his conscience. I could see the muscles in his shoulders tense with each accusation. "Bernard," I called, "bring me the alpha's discipline rod." Olivia stepped forward, her emerald eyes wide with concern. "Grandmother—" "No one is allowed to speak for him," I interrupted firmly. She fell silent immediately, understanding my message. This was between Ethan and me. Bernard returned with the polished wooden rod, its ancient runes gleaming in the dim light of the hall. I took it from him, feeling its weight in my aged hands. Without warning, I brought it down across Ethan's back. The sound of wood striking flesh echoed through the hall. 1, 2, 3. I continued methodically, each strike precise and powerful despite my age. By the 10th blow, Ethan's shirt was torn, revealing the raw, reddened skin beneath. To his credit, he never made a sound, accepting his punishment with the dignity befitting an alpha. When I finished, I handed the rod back to Bernard, suddenly feeling every one of my many years. The exertion had taken more out of me than I cared to admit. "Olivia," I said, my voice softening, "Grandmother is tired and going to rest. You take care of this boy's wounds." She nodded, her expression a complex mixture of gratitude and concern. I patted her hand gently before leaving the hall, satisfied that I had done what I could to restore balance to my family. I followed Ethan to his bedroom, maintaining a careful distance between us. The silence stretched uncomfortably as he opened the door and stepped aside to let me enter. His private quarters were exactly as I remembered, immaculately organized with dark, masculine furnishings that reflected his powerful personality. Ethan moved to the sofa, wincing slightly as he lowered himself onto the edge. With deliberate movements, he removed his torn shirt, revealing the extent of his injuries. Angry red welts crisscrossed his broad back, some already darkening to bruises. Chapter 37, Wounds and Revelations. Ethan Stone's back was lean and muscular, marred by 10 crisscrossing lash marks from the whip. The angry red welts stood out starkly against his tanned skin, some already beginning to bruise. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy. A knock on the door interrupted my examination of his wounds. I hesitated before answering it, suddenly aware of how intimate this situation might appear to an outsider. A servant stood at the door, holding a wooden box carved with intricate moonstone inlays. "Mrs. Winters, this is Dr. Harold Bennett's special healing salve for Mr. Stone." I recognized the familiar, expensive salve immediately. Dr. Bennett had been the Stone family's healer for decades, and his special remedies were legendary among werewolves. The distinctive herbal scent wafted from the box, earthy and medicinal. "Thank you," I said, taking the box and closing the door. As I opened it, the full aroma filled the air. It was the same scent I had. "Why are you just standing there? Come and apply the salve," Ethan called, interrupting my thoughts. I approached the sofa where he sat waiting, his broad shoulders tense with pain and impatience. "Lie down," I instructed, keeping my voice clinical and detached. "It will be easier to reach all the wounds." Ethan complied without argument, stretching out on his stomach across the sofa. The position made him look oddly vulnerable, not at all like the powerful Alpha King who commanded the entire Silvercrest pack. I sat beside him on the edge of the sofa and began applying the salve, pressing down hard on his wounds with deliberate force. "Ouch!" Ethan winced, turning his head to glance at my serious face. A slight smirk played on his lips as he lightly pinched my waist. "Be gentle." I ignored him, continuing to apply the salve with unnecessary pressure. Each time he flinched, a small, petty part of me felt satisfied. After everything he'd put me through, a little discomfort seemed like minimal retribution. Ethan's brow twitched, but he remained silent, enduring the pain. When I finally finished, I rose to leave, eager to put distance between us. As I did, Ethan reached out and caught my waist, pulling me into his arms with surprising strength for someone who'd just been whipped. "Tormenting me on purpose?" he asked, looking down at me with those amber eyes that once made my heart race. "No," I replied, feigning innocence. I tried to pull his hand away and free myself, but he pulled me back down. "No?" he questioned, his tone playful. He swiftly maneuvered us so that he was above me on the sofa, his weight pressing me down into the cushions. I cried out in pain as my back made contact with the sofa. The welts from the discipline rod Isabel had used on me earlier flared with fresh agony. Ethan paused, his playful expression immediately replaced with concern. He gently turned me onto my side, lifting the back of my shirt to reveal the stark red welts crossing my pale skin. His gaze turned icy, jaw clenching with barely controlled rage. Without a word, he picked up the salve and began applying it to my injuries, his touch surprisingly gentle. The cool balm soothed the burning pain, bringing immediate relief. I closed my eyes, momentarily allowing myself to remember a time when his touch was familiar, when his care for me was unquestioned. "Ethan," I began, my voice tight with suppressed emotion, "remember when Emma first met Lily and fell into the reflection pool? Wasn't it similar to today?" Ethan froze, his gentle touch turning to stone. "What are you trying to say?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. I pressed on, undeterred by his anger. This might be my only chance to make him see the truth. "I'm saying, if there had been surveillance cameras by Victoria's pool that day, wouldn't the truth have been revealed just like today?" "Olivia Winters," Ethan roared, his grip tightening on my back. I gasped in pain. The brief moment of shared warmth vanished like morning dew in summer heat. Ethan immediately loosened his grip, but his anger was palpable. He stood up, towering over me, his amber eyes flashing with fury. "Olivia, just because you didn't push Emma today doesn't mean Lily didn't push her that day," he said coldly before turning and leaving the room. I slowly sat up, my eyes cold and distant. I had hoped that today's incident, mirroring the past, would at least make him question the narrative he believed. I had underestimated the hold Victoria and her daughter had on him. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the lingering scent of Dr. Bennett's healing salve, Isabel's POV. I sat on my bed, tears streaming down my face as I looked at my bruised knees and bloodied legs. The pain was excruciating, but my rage burned even hotter. "That Olivia, I won't let her get away with this," I seethed, pressing a cold compress against my throbbing knee. Mother stood nearby, her expression a mixture of concern and anger. She'd always protected me, always ensured I got whatever I wanted. This humiliation was unprecedented in my 24 years. Just then, a servant from Ethan's quarters entered without knocking. His face was impassive as he delivered his message. "Miss Stone, Mr. Stone has ordered you to the ancestral hall to receive punishment." My eyes widened in fear. "I won't go," I cried, the pain from the earlier whipping still fresh. I looked pleadingly at Mother, expecting her to intervene as she always did. But the servants, following Ethan's direct orders, grabbed my arms and began dragging me from the bed. "Let go of me. I'm injured." I screamed, fighting against their grip. Mother stepped forward, her voice sharp with authority. "How dare you? Release my daughter immediately." The servants hesitated, caught between conflicting orders from two powerful members of the Stone family, but Ethan's authority as Alpha King outweighed my mother's. "We apologize, Mrs. Stone, but these are direct orders from the Alpha," one servant said apologetically, before continuing to pull me toward the door. My screams echoed through the hallways as they dragged me away, ignoring my protests and Mother's scolding. I arrived at the ancestral hall just as the punishment concluded. My daughter lay on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably, having endured 10 lashes of the discipline rod. Her shirt was torn, revealing angry red welts across her delicate skin. "Mom!" Isabel wailed, her face streaked with tears and mascara. My heart broke at the sight of my daughter's suffering. How could Ethan do this to his own cousin? I rushed to her side, gathering her trembling form in my arms. "Shh, I'm here now," I soothed, stroking her hair. I ordered the servants to take Isabel back to her quarters and immediately stormed off to confront Ethan. I found him in his study, calmly reviewing documents as if he hadn't just ordered my daughter's brutal punishment. "Ethan, what is the meaning of this? What did Isabel do to deserve such punishment? I demanded, trying to maintain an authoritative tone but faltering under his cold gaze. He looked up from his papers, his amber eyes devoid of emotion. She lied about witnessing Olivia push Emma. She attempted to frame my mate for a serious transgression. She's just a young woman, afraid of pain. What? I argued, gesturing wildly with my hands. How could she endure 10 lashes? Aunt, Olivia is the same age, Ethan replied calmly, his eyes sharp as he set down his pen. The message was clear. He was retaliating for Olivia. Isabel, for trying to harm Olivia, had received the exact same punishment that had been inflicted on his mate. I clenched my fists, realizing I was at a disadvantage. For years, Ethan had ignored Olivia, allowing us to treat her however we wished. This sudden defense of her made no sense. Isn't Victoria the one you care about? I blurted out, confused by his sudden defense of Olivia. Ethan's expression darkened. Victoria is not my mate. Olivia is the Luna of this pack, and any attack against her is an attack against me. His words were practiced, formal, the expected response from an alpha regarding his Luna. But there was something else in his eyes, something I couldn't quite identify. You've never cared before, I pressed, searching his face for answers. I've always cared, he replied, his voice low and dangerous. Don't mistake my patience for indifference, Aunt Eleanor. I stood on the second-floor landing, having followed the sounds of Eleanor's confrontation with Ethan. His words reached me clearly. Victoria is not my mate. Olivia is the Luna of this pack. A flicker of hope had sparked within me, only to die just as quickly. His defense was about position, not love, about pack hierarchy, not personal feeling. I descended the stairs, ignoring Eleanor as she emerged from Ethan's study. Her venomous glare meant nothing to me now. I made my way toward the kitchen, intending to prepare a meal for matriarch Evelyn. As I passed Ethan, who had followed Eleanor out of his study, he stopped me. Olivia, he called out. I continued walking, refusing to acknowledge him. After our confrontation in his room, I had nothing more to say. Where's Lily? He asked. I'll go pick her up so she can have dinner with grandmother. Chapter 38. Memories Lost in Time. I froze mid-step, my heart seizing in my chest. Had I heard him correctly? Where's Lily? Ethan repeated, his tone casual as if asking about the weather. I'll go pick her up so she can have dinner with grandmother. My lungs refused to work. The hallway seemed to tilt beneath my feet. How could he mention our daughter so casually? As if she were still alive? As if he hadn't missed her funeral? Olivia Winters, stop acting crazy, Ethan warned, his amber eyes narrowing at my silence. I could read the message in his gaze. He didn't want me to bring up Lily's death again. He still refused to believe she was gone. My eyes darkened with fury. I hadn't planned to say anything about her death. My concern was for matriarch Evelyn. She had loved Lily fiercely, had been the only one besides me to visit her regularly during her illness. Could the elderly woman bear the news of her death? Would it break her already fragile health? I opened my mouth to respond when matriarch Evelyn's voice came from the staircase. What are you talking about? Picking someone up for dinner with me? Panic seized me. I turned to face her, forcing a smile as I approached. Grandmother, there's no? I tried to change the subject, but Ethan cut me off. Lily, he said, looking at me pointedly. I glared at him before turning back to matriarch Evelyn, my mind racing for what to say. Grandmother Lily, she's... I began hesitantly. Who's Lily? Matriarch Evelyn frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. I stopped, stunned into silence. The question hit me like a physical blow. How could she not remember Lily, her own great-granddaughter? Ethan's expression shifted from annoyance to concern. He pulled out his phone and quickly typed a message. I've texted Dr. Bennett to come over, he murmured, his voice suddenly serious. Liv, why aren't you speaking? Matriarch Evelyn patted my hand gently, concern in her aged eyes. I squeezed her hand back, fighting to keep my tears at bay. Lily is someone very important to me, I said softly, unable to bring myself to explain further. Important? Then grandmother must meet her, she said decisively. Ethan, go pick her up. My throat tightened. I couldn't do this. I couldn't explain that Lily was gone, that she'd never again run through these halls or sit at the dinner table. Grandmother, Lily isn't available today, I managed. I'll take you to see her later. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't bear to see the pain that would fill her eyes when she learned the truth. "All right," she conceded, "but when she's free, you must bring her home. Grandmother likes anyone who's good to our Liv." Only her. Only my grandmother-in-law had truly cared for Lily in this family. I blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. "Okay," I whispered. Dr. Harold Bennett arrived quickly at the Stone estate, his medical bag in hand. Despite his age, he moved with the efficiency of someone half his years. "She seems confused about certain people," I explained quietly as I led him toward Matriarch Evelyn's room. "She doesn't remember. Important family members." The doctor nodded gravely, his experienced eyes showing he understood my concern. With some gentle persuasion, I convinced Matriarch Evelyn to have a checkup. She agreed primarily to ease my worry, patting my cheek affectionately before disappearing into the examination room with Dr. Bennett. 30 long minutes later, the door opened. Dr. Bennett emerged, his expression troubled. "How is grandmother?" Ethan and I asked simultaneously, our mutual concern temporarily bridging the gulf between us. "She'll be fine if she avoids any shocks and takes care of herself," Dr. Bennett began, his voice measured. But what?" I pressed, anxiety clawing at my chest. "She has memory loss," he explained. "Her memories stop after that night 5 years ago. The last 5 years are blank." 5 years ago. Before Lily fell ill, before everything fell apart. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by guilt. How could I be relieved that Matriarch Evelyn couldn't remember her own great-granddaughter? I felt Ethan's gaze on me and looked up to find him watching me intently. His brow furrowed as he seemed to read my thoughts. "How long do you intend to hide Lily's death?" his eyes seemed to ask. "If you glare at Liv again, I'll gouge your eyes out," Matriarch Evelyn scolded, emerging from her room. She approached Ethan and delivered a sharp slap to his back, right where his wounds from the whipping were still healing. "Ouch!" Ethan winced, his face contorting in pain. "Serves you right," Matriarch Evelyn declared, but I noticed the concern that flashed in her eyes. She had forgotten her own punishment of him earlier. The doctor's diagnosis was confirmed in that small moment. Later that evening, I prepared a special meal for Matriarch Evelyn. Herb-roasted venison with berry sauce, her favorite. I carefully measured the healing herbs that would strengthen her without interfering with her medication. "This is delicious, Liv," she praised, happily accepting a second-half bowl. "No one cooks like you." Her words warmed my heart. After dinner, she insisted on a stroll through the garden, claiming the evening air would help her digestion. We had barely made it halfway across the lawn when the sky opened up. Rain poured down without warning, drenching us instantly. Without hesitation, I removed my coat and held it over Matriarch Evelyn's head, shielding her from the downpour. "Liv, you'll catch cold," she protested, trying to share the makeshift shelter. "I'm fine," I assured her, though the rain had already soaked through my clothes. By the time servants arrived with umbrellas, I was drenched to the skin, my hair plastered to my face and neck. "Liv, go take a hot shower so you don't catch a cold," Matriarch Evelyn urged as we entered the house. "With your weak constitution, you can't afford to get sick." She was right. I had my first day at Canis Enterprises on Monday, and my immune system was already weakened from stress and grief. "Okay," I agreed, heading toward Ethan's wing of the Stone estate. I felt Matriarch Evelyn's eyes on my back as I walked away, but I didn't turn around to see the knowing smile that played on her lips. Ethan had gone to his study for a video conference with business partners. According to Bernard, it would last at least 2 hours. He wouldn't be back anytime soon. Still, I locked the bedroom door behind me, cautious in what felt like enemy territory. I quickly undressed, placing my wet clothes in the dryer. Though I had lived with Ethan for 5 years at Imperial Gardens, I had never stayed overnight in his room since Lily fell ill. The bathroom filled with steam as I turned the shower to its hottest setting. I stepped under the spray, letting the warm water wash away the chill and soothe the welts on my back from the recent punishment. The sound of the water masked the noise from outside, and I didn't hear the doorknob turning. Chapter 39. Midnight Interruptions. Ethan's POV. I slid the key Bernard had given me into the lock and pushed the door open. The room was filled with steam from the bathroom, and the sound of running water echoed through my bedroom. She was here, in my territory. I closed the door behind me and turned the lock with a decisive click. No interruptions tonight. I shrugged off my formal alpha jacket, draping it over a nearby chair. The weight of my phone in the pocket reminded me of pack duties, but they could wait. This couldn't. The bathroom door stood partially open. Light spilled out in a golden rectangle across the dark floor. I moved toward it silently, my wolf instincts taking over. I pushed the door wider, steam rolling out to envelop me. There she stood, her back to me, water cascading over her slender form like liquid silver. The welts from the discipline rod were still visible across her pale skin. Angry red lines marring what should be perfect. Something twisted painfully in my chest at the sight. Olivia suddenly tensed, sensing my presence. She whirled around, emerald eyes widening in shock and alarm. Water droplets clung to her lashes, making her eyes seem even more vibrant. "Ethan!" she gasped, immediately reaching for a towel to cover herself. "Matriarch Evelyn is waiting for me." I blocked the doorway with my body. Grandmother is already asleep. She doesn't want to be disturbed. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. She clearly didn't believe me. She tried to push past me, but I remained solid as stone. Her frustration was evident in the flush rising to her cheeks. "Let me go," she demanded, her voice low and threatening. When I didn't respond, she raised her foot, clearly intending to stomp on mine. I reacted instantly, lifting her completely off the ground with ease. Her wet skin slid against my clothes as she struggled. "Put me down," she hissed, twisting in my grasp. The sudden sharp tone of Victoria's ringtone cut through our struggle like a knife. I froze, immediately recognizing the sound. I released Olivia, letting her feet touch the floor as I reached for my phone. I kept one arm loosely around her waist to prevent her escape. "Victoria," I answered with sharp impatience. "What is it?" Olivia continued to struggle against my hold. I pressed my hand over her mouth to silence her protests. Victoria's voice came through the line, but her words barely registered. Something about Emma acting up again. "Nothing urgent. I'm busy. I'll call you back," I snapped, ending the call abruptly. I tossed my phone onto the counter and turned my attention back to Olivia, who was glaring at me with undisguised hatred. Before I could speak, the phone rang again. Victoria's name flashed brightly on the screen. I ignored it, focusing on the woman in front of me. But the ringing continued, persistent and demanding, as Victoria herself. On the third ring, Olivia reached for the phone, likely to silence it permanently. I caught her wrist mid-air, snatching the phone myself. "What?" I growled, not bothering to hide my irritation. Victoria's voice came through, high-pitched and frantic. "Ethan, what should I do? Emma has been having nightmares since she fell in the moonlit reflection pool today." My body tensed immediately, all thoughts of Olivia vanishing. "She keeps crying for you, and I can't soothe her." Victoria continued, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'm so worried. I want to take her to the Silvercrest Pack Medical Den, but the rain is too heavy. What should I do?" In the background, I could hear Emma's voice, small and frightened. "Daddy, I want Daddy." The sound of her distress twisted something deep inside me. Emma needed me. Nothing else mattered. "Don't panic," I told Victoria, already moving toward my closet. "I'm on my way." Olivia tried to pull me back, her fingers catching on my sleeve. "Ethan, wait." I shook her off without a second thought and quickly changed into clean clothes. Emma's cries echoed in my mind, drowning out everything else. I left the bedroom without a backward glance, my face set with determination and worry. The door closed firmly behind me. I watched Ethan rush out, a bitter smile playing on my lips. Not even 10 minutes alone with me before Victoria's call pulled him away like a puppet on strings. His devotion to her was almost impressive in its predictability. The moment Victoria called, nothing else mattered, not even his supposed desire for me. One day he would discover their true nature, and I would be there to witness his world crumble. I returned to the bathroom to finish my shower, letting the scalding water wash away the lingering sensation of his touch on my skin. Every place he'd touched me felt contaminated. After drying off, I dressed in the spare clothes I'd brought. Despite my exhaustion, sleep refused to come. My mind raced with thoughts of Ethan, Victoria, and the twisted game we were all trapped in. I decided to go downstairs for a glass of water. The stone estate was eerily quiet at this hour, most of its occupants already lost to dreams. The cool water soothed my throat but did nothing for the restlessness spreading through my limbs. I needed to move, to channel this nervous energy before it consumed me. The private training room would be empty now. I could work through some of my frustration there, maybe find some peace in physical exertion. I made my way down the plushly carpeted corridor, my footsteps soundless in the darkness. As I approached Eleanor's wing, voices reached my ears. I slowed my pace, not wanting a confrontation with Eleanor or Isabel after today's events. "You'd better not disappoint me." Eleanor's sharp voice cut through the silence like a knife. I froze instantly, pressing myself against the wall to avoid detection. "Victoria Frost, I spent $50,000 to get you the first place in the Canis Enterprises competition, and I've paved the way for you." My breath caught painfully in my throat. Eleanor had paid for Victoria's win? The competition I had worked so hard for had been rigged from the start? The call ended abruptly, and Eleanor's footsteps approached my hiding spot. I quickly ducked into a nearby alcove, heart pounding as she passed by, heading toward the private training room. Once she was gone, I leaned against the wall, mind racing with this new information. It wasn't Ethan who had stolen my first place for Victoria. It was Eleanor's manipulation all along. Suddenly, Isabel's taunts at the awards ceremony made perfect sense. "Do you really think you could win first place?" she had sneered with such confidence. I remembered the panic that flashed across Victoria and Isabel's faces when Ethan appeared unexpectedly. They weren't afraid he would overhear their cruelty toward me. They feared he would discover their bribery scheme. A slow smile spread across my face. Eleanor had made a critical mistake, and now I had leverage I could use. For once in this twisted game of power, I might have the upper hand. A plan began to form in my mind. Chapter 40. A Bitter Beginning. Monday morning arrived with a gentle drizzle, washing away the weekend's tension. My first day at Canis Enterprises loomed ahead, both exciting and daunting. I'd chosen to take public transportation to avoid morning traffic. The bus stopped near the imposing glass tower that housed the prestigious Healing Crystal Company. As I stepped off the bus, a familiar voice called out, "Mrs. Winters? Is that you?" I turned to see Sophia Hughes, the third-place winner from the Pack Healers Crystal competition. Her friendly smile was a welcome sight. "Good morning, Sophia. Please call me Olivia." She fell into step beside me. "First day jitters? I barely slept last night." I nodded, appreciating her candor. "Same here, but we earned our places." We chatted easily as we entered the building's marble lobby. The elevator bank stood ahead, already crowded with morning commuters. "I can't believe we'll be working with Alexander Thornton," Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with admiration. His crystal designs revolutionized werewolf healing practices. Before I could respond, the distinctive clip of high heels against marble caught my attention. Victoria Frost approached, looking immaculate in a designer suit that probably cost more than most wolves earned in a month. Her eyes narrowed slightly when she spotted me, but her face quickly rearranged into a pleasant mask. She pulled out her phone and began speaking loudly. "Ethan, I'm already at the elevator." Her voice carried deliberately across the lobby. "Don't worry. With you around, I won't be wronged. Drive safely." She hung up, her face beaming with feigned affection. Her eyes met mine, a provocative glance that spoke volumes. Message received. Ethan had driven her to work. They were close. I was not. The elevator arrived with a soft chime and we stepped inside. Sophia seemed starstruck, edging closer to Victoria. "Did Alpha King Stone drive you to work today?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. Victoria gave a coy smile. "He insisted. He's always so protective." Her demeanor radiated happiness, and I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Victoria was playing her role perfectly, the adored mistress of the Alpha King. Sophia lapped it up, clearly impressed by Victoria's connection to Ethan. I remained silent, unwilling to give Victoria the satisfaction of a response. The elevator doors opened onto the 40th floor, revealing the sleek headquarters of Canis Enterprises. A woman with sharp features and a tablet in hand awaited us. "Welcome to Canis Enterprises," she said crisply. "I'm Amanda Fletcher, Alexander Thornton's assistant." Her gaze swept over us, lingering dismissively on me before brightening as it landed on Victoria. "Mrs. Frost, we've been expecting you. Mr. Thornton is particularly excited about your crystal designs. Victoria preened under the attention. How kind of him. Vicky, Amanda turned to me, her tone noticeably cooler. And you must be Mrs. Winters. Alexander mentioned your unique approach. The hesitation in her voice spoke volumes. She clearly doubted my abilities. I'm honored to be here, I replied evenly. Amanda's smile didn't reach her eyes. You can say that again after you pass the probation period. Victoria stepped forward, producing an elegantly wrapped box. Miss Fletcher, a small token of appreciation. It's exclusive moonlight coffee from the Stone family's private reserve. Amanda's demeanor transformed instantly. How thoughtful. Thank you, Mrs. Frost. I bit back a retort. Of course, Victoria would use Ethan's resources to curry favor on her first day. Amanda led us through the office, introducing us to our new colleagues. This is Victoria Frost, our first-place winner in the Pack Healers Crystal competition, she announced proudly. When my turn came, her introduction was perfunctory. Olivia Winters, second place. Despite Amanda's obvious favoritism, I greeted everyone warmly. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Your crystal designs are legendary in the healing community. Several designers approached me, complimenting my competition entry. Your moonstone configuration was innovative, one said. I've never seen that arrangement before. I felt Victoria's gaze burning into me as attention shifted my way. From the corner of my eye, I saw her discreetly typing on her phone. Minutes later, the office doors opened, and several delivery people entered, carrying trays of high-end coffee and pastries. Delivery for Mrs. Victoria Frost, courtesy of Alpha King Ethan Stone, announced the lead delivery person. Victoria feigned surprise, her hand fluttering to her chest. Oh my, Ethan shouldn't have! She immediately began distributing the treats. Please, everyone, enjoy. Ethan wanted to make sure my first day started well. The office staff gathered around, clearly impressed by the extravagant gesture. Victoria stood at the center, graciously accepting their thanks, as if she were already their leader. I watched silently, resentment building in my chest. Not because of the treats themselves, but because of what they represented. Ethan's determination to ensure Victoria faced no discomfort, no challenge. He'd always protected her, even at Lily's expense. After the impromptu celebration, Amanda assigned us our initial tasks. Victoria, you'll be working directly with Gregory Hayes on the new Healing Crystal line. Sophia, you'll assist in the testing department. Olivia, please organize the reference materials in room 403. Filing duty, the least prestigious assignment possible. I'll be away on a business trip this afternoon, Amanda continued. Gregory will oversee your progress. As everyone dispersed to their assigned tasks, I made my way to room 403. The materials room was filled with crystal samples and design references, a treasure trove of knowledge despite the menial nature of the task. I had just begun sorting through the files when the door opened behind me. Victoria slipped in, closing the door quietly. The moment we were alone, her pleasant mask fell away. Her eyes hardened, lips curling into a sneer. "Enjoying your first day, Olivia?" she asked, voice dripping with disdain. I continued organizing files, refusing to engage. "Is there something you need, Victoria?" She leaned against the door, blocking the exit. "You know what's funny? Last night, after Emma finally fell asleep, I went to Ethan's room wearing his favorite lingerie. My hands stilled momentarily before I forced myself to continue working. He barely looked at me," Victoria continued, her voice tight with frustration. "He was so worried about Emma, checking on her every hour. When I tried to seduce him, he just patted my head like a child and told me to get some rest." I turned to face her, curious where this was going. "It wasn't always like this," she hissed. "Before you came along with your pathetic orphan story and caught his grandmother's attention, Ethan and I were inseparable. We were meant to be mates." Her jealousy was palpable, filling the small room with bitter energy. "And now, even after 5 years of you proving yourself worthless, even after your daughter died, he still won't fully commit to me," she spat. The mention of Lily sent a wave of rage through me, but I kept my expression neutral. Victoria wanted a reaction. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Her frustration grew at my silence. "I saw how he looked at you yesterday in his bedroom. I'm not blind, Olivia." So that's what this was about. Victoria had somehow learned about my encounter with Ethan. "Olivia Winters, you know Ethan loves me, yet you repeatedly try to seduce him. How can you be so shameless?"